President Trump is on his way home following this whirlwind state trip. He's touting breakthroughs with China on business, on trade, and a mutual understanding with Xi on the Iran war. China, by far the biggest buyer of Iranian oil. The president says China agrees Iran can't have a nuclear weapon, but maintains the U.S. doesn't need China's help in bringing the conflict to a close.
Did President Xi make any firm commitment to put pressure on the Iranians to reopen the Strait of Hormuz?
I'm not asking for any favors, because when you ask for favors, you have to do favors in return. We don't need favors. We've wiped out their armed forces, essentially. We may have to do a little cleanup work because we had a little long ceasefire, I guess you'd call it, but we have a blockade that's so effective. I think he will. I think automatically he'd like to see it opened up. He gets about 40% of his energy or his oil from that, from the strait. We get none.
Mark Meredith has all those details for us from the White House this morning. Hi, Mark.
Jillian and Shannon, good morning to you both. President Trump left China very happy with the way the trip went. He said plenty of nice things about his Chinese counterpart, but now comes the hard part. Will U.S.-China relations become more stable in the months ahead? The president says while he was on the ground in China, he got more of a commitment from the Chinese to buy more American products, from soybeans to Boeing planes. Some analysts were expecting a bit more, though. Market futures set to open sharply lower in about 30 minutes. Boeing stock also down this morning as the order was less than analysts expected. But today, it is foreign policy dominating the day after the summit. The president says two major issues of mutual concern came up. First, Taiwan, which China claims as its own. The president said he made no firm commitment on what the U.S. would do if China were to invade Taiwan. And when it comes to Iran, the president says China wants to help end the conflict.
On Taiwan, he does not want to see a fight for independence because that would be a very strong confrontation. And I heard him out. Are you going to change your word? No, I didn't make a comment on it. I heard him out. I have a lot of respect for him. On Iran, it's very interesting. He feels strongly they can't have a nuclear weapon. He said that very strongly. They cannot have a nuclear weapon, and he wants them to open up the strait.
As the Wall Street Journal points out today, the broad takeaway in Beijing was that Trump and Xi both sought an end to a 10-year era in which the U.S. sought to blunt economic and security threats from China. The president says it's China who desperately needs Iran to reopen the strait. China, of course, gets so much of its oil from Iran, but there's still no commitment yet on what any sort of Chinese intervention would look like in the conflict. As for President Trump and President Xi, they do have that friendly relationship, and it looks like it'll continue. President Trump inviting the Chinese president here to Washington in September. That date is notable because there will be some trade deadlines that would go into effect in October, so likely they'd want to see some sort of deal worked out. As for the president, he is still in flight right now, and he's due back here in Washington around dinner time. Jillian.
All right, Mark Meredith at 1600 Pennsylvania Avenue for us this morning. Thank you. Shannon?
All right, let's bring in former Secretary of State Mike Pompeo. Mr. Secretary, always good to see you. I want to start here because you are somebody who's been a strong voice about warning against China and its intentions for years. What do you make coming out of this summit? Are we to believe at least what they've agreed to so far, or reassured President Trump with regard to that so far?
Well, good morning, Shannon. Look, in the end, Xi Jinping has lied multiple times to multiple presidents. The proof will be, does he really follow through? The commercial arrangement, buying Boeing airplanes, that's fantastic. It sounds like he made some commitments on fentanyl precursors. We've seen that story before where they actually didn't follow through in a way that was serious or substantial. And so the proof is in the pudding. He told President Obama he wouldn't militarize islands. He lied to us about the virus that came from his lab. Xi Jinping has a mission set. When he threatened us with respect to Taiwan, he was serious, and we need to make sure we're eyes wide open. And I'm glad President Trump is certainly that.
Well, what do you make about the conversation and what the president has told us about his readout of a conversation with President Xi with respect to Taiwan? Because he says Xi pressed him a lot. Are you going to come to their defense? What are you going to do? There are a lot of questions about whether we're slow walking everything that we could provide to them, this tens of billions that they've ordered from us with respect to weapons and machinery and that kind of thing.
President Trump has provided more weapons, defensive weapon systems to Taiwan, I think, than any previous administration, and I think they're continuing to do that. They've built out relationships with the Japanese government and the South Koreans that are ways that are going to deter Xi Jinping and China. Whatever Xi Jinping may have said, I'm confident President Trump delivered a message that the United States understands how important Taiwan is, not just to our geopolitical interests, but to our commercial interests as well. The AI fight largely takes place there, and President Trump is not going to permit Xi Jinping to do something that would jeopardize the American economy in that way.
Okay, so of course Iran is a huge issue, and here's a little bit what the president said about his conversation with Xi on that issue.
He said he's not going to give military equipment. That's a big statement. He said that today. That's a big statement. He said that strongly. But at the same time, he said, you know, they buy a lot of their oil there, and they'd like to keep doing that. He'd like to see Hormuz Strait opened.
So this gets to some of your point in the past that Xi has lied about things in the past. There were reports just weeks ago that there were attempts possibly to get some weaponry to Iran, possibly through third-party countries. Do you think they're going to assist Iran in a military capacity?
Shannon, I think they likely already are. I think what she said there may well be true at some level. We're not going to send weapons. They're not going to send tanks and airplanes. But massive pieces of the Iranian machine, the components, the things that go into their long-range missile systems, the things that go into their radar systems, the tools, the components, those are Chinese components. I doubt seriously that Xi Jinping will stop that. They have a deep and long relationship with the regime in Iran. It's useful to them because the Iranian regime makes life difficult for the United States. And while it is true that I think Xi would like to have the strait open, I think that's true. He'd like to have that oil. He also wants to make sure that he doesn't lose his foothold in the Middle East, which is this regime in Iran.
Well, I want to quickly ask you about Kharg Island because our Lauren Simonetti continues to do a ton of reporting on that, what's getting in, what's getting out. Apparently, the capacity for storage there is beyond what are considered safe levels. It's now at about 85% with this product having nearly nowhere to go. Now, we also have reports from Lauren that there are some ships that have gotten around the U.S. blockade there in and out of Iranian ports. What do you make of that situation and the potential ripple impact on, global economies all over the place?
Shannon, you and I spoke about this when the blockade first began, right? Eventually, you can only store so much oil in so many tanks and so many ships offshore. I doubt very many or a significant amount of ships were actually loaded or offloaded out of Kharg Island. We would see that and know that in instantaneous timeline. And so this will be a real problem for the regime. What is it they're going to do? They're going to have to shut in their fields. And we talked about the fact that these blockades are effective, but that they also take time. And I think what Secretary Besson said reflects exactly that. We've been at this for several weeks now. Every day that goes on, the economic hardship for this regime, their ability to pay their soldiers and their sailors gets more difficult. The blockade is effective and is a useful tool to achieve America's objectives with respect to Iran.
Secretary Pompeo, always great to chat with you. Thank you so much.
Thank you, Shannon. Have a great weekend.
Be sure to like and subscribe for all the Fox News latest on YouTube and catch full shows streaming now on Fox One.